I think he's completely wrong, Chris, and I think it shows a lack of understanding of the president's broader policy when it comes to protecting Americans at home and abroad from all acts of terrorism.
And that was Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, talking about Sebastian Gorka's opinion about the war in Afghanistan, said he's completely wrong and shows a lack of understanding of the president's broader policy. Is that indeed true? Well, Dr. Sebastian Gorka on Friday resigned his post. Some debate about how that happened, but Dr. Gorka is now a free man, has already rejoined Breitbart, where Steve Bannon is. Dr. Gorka, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Brian, I haven't rejoined. I'm in talks with Steve Bannon, but I'm part of the Make America Great Again movement on the outside, and it's a great feeling.
Oh, and that's with who? Is that with Corey?
No. You'll find out imminently.
So there's a new organization that's starting, or?
There's going to be several initiatives that we're discussing with key individuals. So, stay tuned.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about Secretary of State Rex Tillerson saying that you don't know what you're talking about?
I'm a bit puzzled. I mean, I don't expect counterterrorism expertise from a former oil industry mogul. But to say that the president's speech on Afghanistan shouldn't be about radical Islamic terrorism, but should be about all forms of terrorism, Brian, I'd like to hear the secretary tell me about all the animal rights terrorists or the white supremacist terrorists that are coming out of the Hindu Kush or Tora Bora. I'm a little bit confused by what he said because it really doesn't make any sense.
So when you hear the Secretary of State before, do you think he could be getting you back because you said that he shouldn't be talking about military matters?
Yeah, I never said that. If he thinks that's what I said, that's a real shame. What I said was that in a government, the BBC made a ridiculous point trying to force military operational details out of Rex Tillerson's mouth. And I said, look, we have a Secretary of Defense that deals with the military issues and a Secretary of State that deals with the diplomatic. That's exactly what I said. If Rex misinterpreted that or believed the fake news spin, that's sad. But look, I'm not here to attack the administration. I'm here to support the president from the outside. I just found Rex's comments confused.
Right. Do you think that the word is that he's on the bubble, that the president's getting a little fed up with him, and for his very slow pace at staffing his own team at the state? Has that really been hindering the fact that he's basically a one-man crew?
Look, I'm not interested in supporting the palace intrigue stories. I was the brunt of enough of them. It doesn't help our nation, and most of them, 90% of them, are totally bogus anyway. But the fact remains, the victory on November the 8th was an insurgent one. The man that nobody took seriously wiped the floor with 16 other candidates, destroyed a woman whose campaign had spent $700 million and who the New York Times and Huffington Post said was a shoo-in. So this was an insurgency. A very small group of people, a scrappy group of fighters won. And as a result, January the 20th, was a hostile takeover. So staffing any department, whether it's the Department of Interior, whether it's the State Department, staffing any part of the federal government is going to be a challenge for an anti-establishment candidate and his cadre, as we are.
Dr. Gorka, what do you know about the president working with him that you didn't know before he asked you to join the administration?
Look, as I said in several interviews, the great thing about Donald Trump is that what you see is what you get. When you see his style on the campaign, on the stump speeches, in front of the television, on Twitter, that's the man. There's no falsehood to him. There's no two-faced. DC is full of two-faced individuals who, when they see a TV camera, click on their fake smile. That's not Donald Trump. He is what you see. He's totally genuine. So there's no real surprises once he's inside the Oval. But the one thing that was reaffirmed for me, especially when we had the tough talks inside the Oval on the Iran deal, the JCPOA deal, is that Donald Trump really likes fighters. He called Steve and I his tough guys, and he has great respect for fighters. And he reached out to me at the weekend, sent a message that he appreciated everything I did, hopes I'm going to support him from the outside. And, Brian, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
When's the last time you talked to him?
Well, he reached out to me on Saturday.
Oh, so you had it. Oh, okay, so you talked to him directly. All right, so he reached out to you then. So how would you characterize your time there?
Amazing. Every day pinching myself. The idea that somebody who's a legal immigrant to the United States can be walking around the West Wing five years after he becomes an American. Only in America. This is the greatest nation on God's earth. But it reinforced for me one thing. The establishment really is embedded. And it's not just on the left, it's on the right as well. I was in numerous meetings. I wasn't part of the NSC, but I went to NSC policy coordination meetings. And the idea that I had to repeatedly remind the bureaucrats on the other end of the VTC, the video teleconference, that we are here to implement the president's vision, that's disturbing. If you're a government employee, you're not here to just do business as usual or to decide what you think is good for America. The people choose the president, and his vision is what should be executed. Too many people in government picking up a taxpayer paycheck forget who they're working for.
That's so interesting because one of my topics today is what's going on here in that the Speaker of the House goes out of his way to comment about a pardon of a Sheriff Arpaio of Arizona. There's no reason for him to weigh in. You also have, obviously Jeb Bush and John McCain seem to have a problem with everything the president does. But I was really surprised that 2 weeks after the actual press conference took happen, Gary Cohn ends up giving an interview with a magazine and then saying how he almost quit. He wrote up his resignation because he didn't like the president's comments that day. What's with all this? What's with all this insubordination from the people that got the job from the president?
Look, I'm not going to comment on Gary. Let his words speak for themselves.
But does it disappoint you as a guy who likes the president?
Look, there's a broader issue here, a really serious one. The GOP thinks they won the election on November the 8th, and they are very, very mistaken in that. Donald Trump may have been the formal Republican candidate, but he wasn't the establishment's candidate. He wiped the floor with all the establishment candidates who never took him seriously. You know who won the election? A real estate mogul from New York called Donald J. Trump. And if the GOP thinks they won the election, they will be sorely disappointed and they will pay the price come the next election. So, they need to wake up and smell the coffee grinds. It's the anti-establishment movement, the people in America, including blue-collar Democrats, who said enough is enough. Left and right have not served us well for at least 16 years. We're going to shake this town up, and that's what the president is. He is a fabulous disruptor, and God bless him, but the GOP needs to wake up to what happened in America on November the 8th because it's not going to change. It's going to get stronger.
Well, it's kind of interesting in that the president was urged, as you know better than anybody, to do repeal and replace first. He wanted to do tax reform or infrastructure. So repeal and replace, they had no plan, and we know it didn't pass. Just barely, but didn't pass. And then we have we're supposed to hear about tax reform. Other lawmakers still have not seen the Republican proposal for tax reform. Do you think it might be an intentional slowdown? Do they understand that they're supposed to be on the same team, let alone convincing Democrats? Republican lawmakers haven't gotten the details from Kevin Brady, chairman of Ways and Means. Why?
Is there any better argument for term limits, Brian? I mean, think about this. The president, in a real respectful gesture towards the checks and balances and the separation of powers in our great nation, said that, I'm going to build the wall, I'm going to defeat ISIS, but when it comes to the literal disaster of Obamacare, you know what? I'm going to hand that responsibility to getting that done to my colleagues on the Hill. Why? Because they've been talking about it for 8 years. So surely they're ready to pull the pin on that one. What happened? He let them run with it, and they fumbled it, and they failed. So again, there's a lesson here for the GOP to learn that they have to change their ways. And if you think sitting in the Senate or sitting in the Congress for 16 years, 30 years, or even more, it means that you know what America wants, not true. Look in the mirror and look at November the 8th and realize that the American people have spoken, and business as usual will not cut it, whether it's tax reform, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's immigration reform, whether it's anything else. So
I don't want you to get you into palace intrigue and gossip, but you do want to get a message out. You want to get a message out that you're not there, Bannon's not there, and you think the president is probably worse off because of it. Is that safe to say?
Look, there are key individuals who were the face of MAGA, were the face of the platform all through the election. There's none of them left inside the building. I talked to a friend of mine inside the White House yesterday who's also considering how he moves forward. And he said, who can I rely upon now? Who's really here from the beginning, who believes in the president's vision? And I thought through it, and I said, there's 4 people left inside the building. I'm not going to name their names, but there's 4 real believers in relatively senior positions. That's not good. As Tucker Carlson said, and he nailed it. He did that piece on Steve's leaving the building. He said, whatever you think about Bannon, the bottom line is he would not have been comfortable in a Hillary Clinton White House. We have a lot of people in the White House of Donald J. Trump who not only would have been comfortable working for Hillary, they probably would have had a cabinet post as well. That is not sound. That is not what the American people voted for. The president knows it, and we shall see how long they last. But sooner or later, the true MAGA agenda has to come back into the building.
Now, Dr. Gorka, I know you're new to the White House, but you're able to look around and understand how other White Houses worked. I understand there's a sense that you guys are understaffed in the building, and Congress is really responsible for most of that, especially with these nominees just being put on hold, despite the 64 that were green-lighted at the last minute after the health care failed. How understaffed does it feel?
It doesn't feel necessarily critical in terms of understaffing, but it's not just the Hill that's responsible. It's the Obama administration. I mean, these stories are out there. The Obama administration, they thought they were going to win. They thought Hillary was going to win. When they realized that she didn't, they laid all kinds of landmines. For example, they spent our fiscal 17 money budget, they spent 25% on it before we arrived in the building by paying off a so-called untaken leave to their former staffers. So there's all kinds of booby traps they put into the system. So, yeah, Capitol Hill has a lot to be responsible for, but the fact is the Obama administration plays dirty, and they tried to sabotage us from before we even moved in to the people's house. So, but it's manageable. It's manageable. I'm not worried about labor numbers, about individuals in the building. I'm concerned about, do they support the president's vision?
What were the circumstances to your dismissal? How did you find out, and did you indeed resign?
Yeah, I was not dismissed. The Federalist article by Molly Hemingway is the most accurate one to date. The fact is, I knew after the Afghan speech that the anti-MAGA forces were in ascendance. Not one mention of radical Islam in that speech that was written for the president. So last week, I emailed General Kelly. I said I want to meet with him today on Monday because I will be resigning effective last Friday. I spoke to him on the telephone on Friday, and I said that I am resigning today, and I reinforced that with an email. That's how it happened, because I realized I work for Steve Bannon. He's gone. The wrong people are at the helm of policy issues. We will right that ship from the outside, but for the time being, the best I can do is to be effective as a private citizen. So the bottom line is, Brian, and they can spin it as much as they like. General Kelly knows the truth. I resigned effective last Friday.
Dr. Gorka, remember, you came on our show after rumors were that you were being let go months ago, and you said that is fake news, and that ended up being the truth, and that ended up being major news because everybody else had it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought I was adequately cynical. Before I came into the building, I had no idea. The fake news industrial complex is out of control. Just think about all the lies that have been perpetrated as so-called news in the last 7 months. The idea that we're an anti-Semitic, racist, white supremacist White House. Let's think about this for a second. The president's grandchildren are Jewish. As far as I know, Stephen Miller is Jewish. I mean, they take reality and they spin it 180 degrees out of whack. But, that's why CNN is 13th in national ratings behind Nick at Night. They are paying the price because the American people, thanks in part to the president's Twitter feed, see through the lies. But there's a lot of fake news still out there, and we're going to be crushing it in the near future.
And
So stay tuned.
well, Dr. Gorka, the president's loss is our gain because now you're out in the arena and you can talk to us even more and more freely. Dr. Gorka, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Brian. God bless.
And thanks for your service and thanks for your candor.